Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to this second day of Digital Alps Conference 2022 here in Trieste. And also a special welcome to all of you that are following us online today. As we mentioned yesterday, in order to unleash the potential of the digitalization, the Alpine region needs to work together on two different levels. First one is building a common vision on policies and priorities at the political level. We went through them with all the intervention of the first political day, thanks to the European Commission, to Mayor of the Alpine region, to the voice of youth people representative, and politician discussion setting the priorities and involvement at the USALP level. But also we need to build a common solution and a common structure to engineering this approach to have an impact in a so huge area that is the Alpine macro region. So this is the focus of the today works. We are here on the stage, the co-leader of AG5. With me there is Thomas Seger that will coordinate the works today. Also we have Mauro Casotto from Trentino Sviluppo, and that is the co-leader of AG3, and there is a strong collaboration between the two action groups. Just a few words about what we are doing as Action Group 5. As you know, there are several years that we are working on different topics. We started from the connectivity side, building a study on ultra broadband networks and what maybe is necessary to fill the gap between countries and in the remote areas to have a strong and resilient broadband network. But after connectivity, we moved toward the roadmap of digital infrastructure, because the connectivity is the enabling factor, but of course, from an overall point of view, Alpine regions need data infrastructure and also innovation facilities distributed on all the territories. The work we have done is not only on the technological side, but also on several other topics. We worked a lot on how to assess the services of general interest, what is the contribution from the digital to these policies, and we set up a think tank about SGI's policies. Also, we worked on how to bring innovation in smart mobility, cross-border commuting, and of course, one of the main topics for rural and mountain areas is how to give support to the digitalization of small and medium enterprises. Of course, we worked a lot on what is one of the main priorities for AG5, that are smart villages. And now smart villages are one of the 5 cross-sectoral main initiatives of all the USALP strategy. And just to conclude, 2 topics that we are working on that are, I think, very useful for the today works. The first one, there is no doubt that we are in a data-driven economy. So the focus here is, and the challenge is to start from maybe the most misunderstood and underrated concept that are open data, going to the big data, AI, and so on. But starting from what maybe has the smallest time to market to capitalize the data value that we have at the Alpine region. And the second one is how to bring the smart villages approach a step further. Usually we we start with something like a reactive or negative approach. We started with digital divide, then the digital divide became something threat about social divide and so on. But when we will connected all the people, when all the people, they have all the skill, okay, but what are the points to capitalize on the experience, of course, but also to have some proactive value-creating approach and not reactive. These are my 2 points, and I give the floor to Mauro for the AG3 contribution.
Thank you, Carlo. And good morning, everybody, and welcome by Action Group 3 and by the Italian USALP presidency, guided by the autonomous provinces of Bolzano and of Trento. I'd like to spend a few words about the main objectives of Action Group 3, that are education and vocational training, that are, as you know, very important key enabling factors for the development and for the competitiveness of the region. We want to analyze these objectives from 3 perspectives, the one of companies, the one of workers, and the one of students. We have 3 main topics analyzed by our action group. The first one is dual education, with the aim to achieve a unique praxis among the Alpine regions. We have in charge ADAPT and INDIRE to draw a picture of dual education and vocational training in the Alpine area. The second topic is soft skills on Alpine jobs, with the aim to reach a sort of standardization. We will be helped by the Institute of Social Studies of the Autonomous Region of Friuli Venezia Giulia in analyzing this topic. The third topic is higher vocational education and training in order to adopt a pact for mutual recognition of titles in the Alpine region, in the Alpine area. I'd like to invite you the next 18th of May in Brussels, where an important conference will be held on the recognition of the mutual recognition of titles. This conference is organized by Lombardy region, by the Autonomous Province of Trento, and of course by Action Group number 3. Today, we will talk about digitalization on the Alps, digitalization as a factor that can enable the economic development of an Alpine region, that can reduce the gap between rural and urban areas. Digitalization can also help people and citizens, as we know, to live and to work in the valleys and in the rural areas, to have services of general interest by the public administration, to have medical services, education and training. In a while, we will attend 4 parallel workshops. 2 of them are of interest of Action Group 3. One is focused on digitalization and education, the second one in digitalization and on labor market. In the second part of the morning, there will be a roundtable talking about the future, talking about future trends in digitalization for the Alpine regions. These are very important topics for our AG3. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Carlo and Mauro. Buongiorno, dobre dan, good morning. This session today are moderated and taken only in English. Yesterday we had translation, today it's no translation. Today we are working in English only. You might understand from my voice that we had a very heated debate yesterday. It was a very good debate yesterday. Yesterday we were debating more political issues related to digitalization. We have seen that there are a lot of initiatives going on, that there is also a lot of money available from European, national, regional side to invest in infrastructures. But there is also a will to invest in the intelligent use of digitalization, digital infrastructures. So we really have the potential to do something. We learned yesterday, for instance, about this Digital Skills Pact, that we can do something, and maybe this meeting today is also some kind of a starting point for a future, even stronger cooperation between our 2 action groups, AG3 and AG5, because I'm convinced we have a lot of topics to develop together on this sense. Yesterday we had this also political statement which supported the idea of digitalization, underlined that digitalization is important. It is not an aim in itself, but it is something to make our mountains, our rural regions more attractive, more livable, and also a future for the young people. And this was for us also the guiding motto yesterday. We had the young people starting in the morning, bringing in their experiences in the afternoon, also on the panel, together with the Assessore, representing also the Italian presidency. And I feel this was a very, very good exchange, also for the young people, and also to give them really the voice. There were many questions raised yesterday, also on a technical level, and today we would like to go into detail with these questions which fit into the programs of AG3 and AG5, and therefore we have identified several workshops. I will shortly introduce now these workshops. I will start with the workshop on open data. Open data was a keyword already presented yesterday. Also Carlo mentioned it now. And we really feel that this must be one of the key topics for the future because there's a huge potential which is not yet used. And there we have Daria, where are you? Ah, there, thank you, who will moderate this workshop. Daria Kukovic comes from the University of Maribor, exactly from the Faculty of Electric Engineering and Computer Science. And she is one of very active members of AG5. She was also an active participant and project partner of the Smart Village project, for instance. So she is very familiar with all those topics. And she is now preparing for us as AG5 a roadmap for open data. So really to identify what can we do with the topic of open data in the Alpine area. So I hope that you can have fruitful discussions also on this topic. Those who will join this will stay here in this room in Sala Targeste. You have already seen that there are the moderators prepared here. Then we have a second workshop. This is more related to topics of AG3, but I don't even like to make a distinction now because we have seen that it is so close together. We really want to discuss also the topic of digitalization, education. How can we bring further education thanks to digitalization? Once again, digitalization is a means to achieve something. I don't want to moderate now your workshop because this is Lars Ludolf from the OECD, who is joining us. He is labor economist at the OECD Center for Entrepreneurship and SMEs and Regions and Cities, if I'm right. And he's really an expert not only on the technical side, if I can say so, but really also on the rural impact side, on the regional development side. And he will moderate this workshop, which will be held in the Sala San Giusto, which is just outside here on the opposite. Then we are looking at digitalization and the labor market. Also a very important topic. We all know that we need labor, we need workers, we need skilled workers, etc. Digitalization is a big challenge in that sense, but also a huge opportunity if we can match the education and the labor market together. I hope that we will achieve this. And I'm looking forward to the results and also on the workshop moderated by Franco Scolari, who is on the back of the room. And he is joining us as a Director General at the Politecnico di Pordenone, Friuli. And we had already exchanged yesterday during lunchtime a lot of topics. And I think this will be a very interesting workshop. Thank you, Franco, for moderating this workshop. It will be actually in the Sala Imperatore, which is on top of this room. So you have to go outside, take the stairs, and you will find it just on top of this room with a nice view on the lake. And then we will have the last workshop, which is on the topic of smart villages. Smart villages, Carlo already mentioned this, right? This was a key topic for us as AG5, where we developed this approach in the Alpine area. We made an Interreg Alpine Space Program project. Gianluca Lentini was one of the project partners of this project. Now he has endeavored to make a second project on this topic, really to continue with this very important topic. You may know that we have also created a network of Alpine smart villages and smart regions, which started last year at the Digital Alps conference. It got some delay because of some uncertainties, but still we are working on this topic. We are, by the way, also working on this topic on cross macro-regional level. We also try to work with the Adriatic, with the Danube, with the Baltics on this topic, because we really feel we can also export something to them, and we can also learn something from them across Europe. We try to adapt it now to the Alpine area, and now we want to exchange also with the other ones. So this is the workshop led by Gianluca Lentini from the Politecnico di Milano, Poliedra, and the workshop will be behind here in the room Zodiaco. This is all from my side for the introduction. We will now start with the workshops directly. You can join the different people in the workshops where you're inscribed. We will be back here at 11:00. You can have the opportunity to have the coffee break for those who are here on place at 10:45. But please be back at 11:00 for the report from the workshops. I will ask the moderators of the workshops to bring in 2 minutes the main conclusions from their workshops, so that all of us, and here I'm addressing mainly also to the people who are connected online, at 11 o'clock we will have the feedback from the workshops, so that all of you will have also, if you are connected online now, the report from the workshop, and then we will have a very interesting look into the future with a panel discussion. So now, this is all from me. Good workshop, good work. I would like to welcome you back from these workshops. I hope that you could enjoy the workshops, work during the workshops. We will now hear what has been elaborated in these workshops, and it will certainly also be interesting for the people who are connected online to hear what has been discussed. I will ask now the moderators of the workshops, and I go by order in which we have them in the program, to briefly introduce us and bring us the main conclusions from the workshops. And for this, I would like to start with Daria, who was dealing with open data. So what are the news on open data?
Yes, my name is Daria Kukovic from University of Maribor, and I'm also an EUSALP AG5 member. What are the conclusions from open data initiative in Alpine region, or workshop that was conducted today? We should increase the range of public bodies. It means governments, local governments, communities, actively engaged in the open data initiative in the Alpine space, promoting an open data approach, starting from EUSALP institutions. Okay? We should also broaden the scope and improve the quality, quantity, and range of open data and associated metadata. Improve the quality and range of services provided in Alpine space, adopting common standards, methodologies, and technologies. And we should also care for investments in data spaces and other infrastructures needed to do these activities. We should also promote networking to engage with all stakeholders, because collaboration is very important. We should also support and encourage the adoption of open data in the Alpine space, embedding the open data approach into programs, funding programs, for example. We should also try to define a framework tailored to Alpine space and on how to contribute to main topics like, for example, tourism, mobility, environment, etc. And last but not least, we should also monitor and evaluate the impact, benefits, and risk of the open data initiative in the Alpine space, to maybe have some benchmarks with other macro-regional strategies.
Thank you very much. That seems like a lot of work for the next years. I'm not sure if we can do everything, I've thought.
Step by step.
What about the topic that was raised yesterday by the young people with these train connections? Did you also discuss this point maybe today?
Yes, we did. But I haven't had the opportunity yesterday because others, participants from the public was asking or were faster than me. I was trying to remind all of you that open data is not question only of accessibility or availability, but it should be machine readable. This is the problem. And then you get the crude, and then you can analyze it and add the other fusion of other data to get other services. And yeah.
But that's definitely a topic to work on.
Yes, of course.
Okay, thank you. So I make the link once again to the young people from yesterday. We will also pick up their revendications, their needs. Okay, let's see with Lars Ludolf. What did you discuss about digitalization and education?
Yes, very happy to report back from a session that was very lively. So I will offer you the three main lessons that we learned, so you can take away something from our learning experience as well. So the basic overarching topic of the session was really that digital tools in education can make societies more inclusive, and that's along societal dimensions, but also along place-based dimensions, and I want to tell you why. So on a societal level, new digital learning tools, so-called gamification of education, can offer new opportunities to help children, in particular children with learning disorders, to learn faster and more efficiently. And we've learned a lot about today how this has been shown in studies, and how children that have engaged in this kind of gamified learning have done much more progress in their learning than in a standard traditional environment. Educational policies can also be tailored to places, and that is very important. Digital tools can help there a lot as well. We have learned that in particular in cities, of course, due to megatrends on the labor market, upskilling and reskilling needs are very urgent there. But one of the main issues is how do you provide people that go through these kind of upskilling and reskilling measures with the credentials that they can actually take elsewhere then. And here digital tools again offer new opportunities, because so-called micro-credentials and digital badges offer an opportunity to actually produce a training record for every worker that can then be transferred to new employers as well. So it's not like you only do training within one company and then your skills are acknowledged there. No, you can also take it with you to other employers. Again, employer engagement here is very important, but we are getting there. So that's mostly for cities that face this transition of labor markets, but we can also learn something about rural areas. And here we've already heard the concept of smart villages in earlier discussions, and a new project that we discussed today connects smart villages between each other. And the idea is that technology matches smart villages that have similar characteristics to support each other in the digitalization. And here, of course, the idea is to provide new learning, lifelong learning opportunities to people in these villages, and to see if one village that has very similar characteristics to another village is maybe already more advanced in the adaptation of these tools, so other villages can catch up quickly. So these are the three main lessons that I took away from our session.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much also for moderating this session. Once again, a little feedback from the discussion yesterday with the young people. Our young people, of course, were coming from rural, remote areas, and they said we should invest mainly in education, distance learning, etc., in rural areas. Could you also confirm this from your discussions today?
Yeah, so that's definitely something that we discussed as well. Well, one fundamental issue with that is, of course, that many young people leave rural areas for learning opportunities. So if rural areas actually want to keep their talent there, they have to offer new opportunities. So that matches really well with what the young people themselves said. So I think that these digital tools that we discussed today can really be the future in that, and can also, to some extent, tackle other societal issues, such as, the aging societies in rural areas, because of the fact that many young people leave. So, yeah, I think that very much resonates with what we heard today.
Perfect, many thanks. And this makes the link also to the labor market, because if you have the education, then we must offer them also job opportunities. Is digitalization the way to offer new job opportunities, Franco?
No doubt, it has been easy for me to moderate different experience and contribute with a common focus to reduce the gap, demand and offer for the labor market. So something that we touch, we cannot think to a long-term future because our companies, our industry needs educated people today. The future is not equally distributed, I used to say. And one of our jobs is to get closer to the needs approaching the future. We had contributes from a lawyer, absolutely interesting for me, because the lawyer said, we need sometimes engineers. Coming from a lawyer is, but I want to underline the key words, interdisciplinarity. More and more, we need to match technology, and digital is a technology definitely cross. We need a different approach, humanistic, engineering, and psychological, if you want, cultural, to use the word. After the lawyer, we had a geomatic professor, and he was approaching the sense of urban and rural. What you can do to reduce the physical distance that there is. His proposal, coming from Grenoble, is to have a distributed university. Because definitely with changing a little bit the context, but using the technology, having specialist coach and tailor, you can reach remote students. Then we had a colleague of mine that takes in care of upskilling blue collars, because you can say that digitally you can work from anywhere, sorry. But this is true if you have a brain work job. If you are a professor, you can teach remotely. But if you have to do a compressor for the refrigerator, what you do, you must have a factory. And the last presentation coming from our policymaker from Trento ECD was showing the impact on COVID physically and digitally. Who had physical activity? A lawyer, eventually a professor didn't stop his activity. Probably who was digital. Our technological pole, we have been working more and more because no more Saturday, no more Sunday, and no more hourly time. This is the result of the digitalization. And these are keywords, we missed physical and we missed timing. With digital, you don't have physical boundaries, so urban and cities can be melt somehow. And it's a nonsense to fix hourly rate because you can keep, and this was an interesting comment from our policymaker, productivity increase a lot if you properly use digital.
So digital really is a strong tool to improve the competitiveness of the enterprises and also of our territories, I would like to say, in a place-based approach. Yesterday, the Minister Bisesti said, well, we are not yet already there. We are at a school node of 4, if 6 is the best. So I think we still have quite some potential. I don't know how you estimate the situation of the enterprises in your region. I personally have the impression that they are not really yet fully exploiting the potential to cooperate along the value chains, which is one approach, and also across the different value chains. Because this is also digitalization as a tool to break the silos would be also very important.
Totally. The final comment, one of my comments was digital and new technologies are exponential development, disrupting, okay? my recommendation is don't try to understand how it works. New technology, adopt it and go fast.
And go for it, that's a good statement. Okay, go for it is also the key word for smart villages, because smart villages is the approach to say, what can we do with all these potentials? So is there something new we can do? Gianluca from your workshop.
Oh, yeah. Everybody seems to want to live in a smart village now, and everybody can, in my opinion. It was a good discussion. We had some contributions coming from Austria, from France, from Italy, and from Switzerland as well. And all of these contributions highlighted the fact of the community aspect. A smart village is not a black box of solutions. It is community driven. And in all the territories we've been hearing about, the stakeholder engagement from the beginning to the end of the process has been pivotal and fundamental. Involving stakeholders from the policy administrators, from the civil society, NGOs, organizational citizens is paramount. This co-creation aspect enhances the sense of ownership of the change coming from the rural and mountain territories. And it is as important as the enabling technologies. So the enabling technologies are of course important, but as important is the involvement of local communities. A second important aspect in a smart village transition is to have clear, specific, tailored, easy to understand, easy to implement actions. We're not talking about revolutionizing our mountain areas or rural areas, but creating in local areas these very clear, specific, tailored actions. These clear, specific, tailored actions can future-proof our mountain and rural communities, both facing upcoming crises and future-proof them for the disruptive new technology that's coming. We've seen that the communities that had already implemented some smart villages changes were better equipped while facing COVID and coronavirus crisis. But also these specific solutions that can be created locally, especially if they are technological solutions like interfaces, web pages, and what have you, need to be user-friendly, need to be easy to use for all the population. Otherwise, they are counterproductive, and people react negatively to a change they cannot understand. We also spoke about the linkages between smart villages and smart cities. In some cases, these linkages are there. In some other cases, they are not. But in some surprising cases, smart villages have inspired the revitalization of districts within the cities. Maybe they were abandoned by the main districts of the city, and they took inspiration from positive changes happening in rural urban areas. This also helped us to further delve into the question of networking. Network is important, both at local level, between people that speak the same language, and at international level. The point is inspiring changes that can be co-created locally, that is friendly, that is user-friendly, that is owned by local populations. Changes can happen both in dire and negative situations, like depopulations, economically depressed area, but changes are also possible in rich and wealthy areas. For example, in areas that are maybe very rich for skiing, there are important ski resorts. Sometimes it is difficult to inspire rich areas to change because they do not believe they have a problem. But they also need to future-proof their own areas.
So we really can say that the smart village approach helps to improve the situation, as was asked yesterday, by digitalization, to have a better living conditions, working conditions for also the young people living in this territory.
Yeah, the main point is that of the attractiveness for young people. Young people in particular need to be able to see that change and opportunities are happening in their own areas. They do not need to leave and move to main urban areas in order to have a fulfilling life and work life.
Thank you very much to all of you for your moderation of these workshops. I think we have quite a lot of information, a lot of stuff to discuss, to continue our discussions in AG3, AG4, AG5, pardon. So we rely also on your contributions in the future to continue the discussions. Many thanks. Applause for you. Now, quick change to the next block, and I invite the panelists to join me on the podium. Maybe there in the middle. Well, to conclude, these 2 days we will have now a look into the future. I'm very eagerly looking to that discussion with you 4 panelists. We have one connected externally, Ivo Jungo. I will present now briefly the panelists and then directly go into the discussion. The aim is a little bit to look into the future. What will digitalization offer us as a potential in the upcoming years? Where should we go towards? Where are the opportunities? Where are the challenges? What can we decline for our activities, maybe also in USALP? So this is really the bridge into the future. And I'm looking very much forward to discuss this with you. I start with Francesco Profumo to present you. You're actually the president of the Bruno Kessler Foundation. You have a long also political career. You were once rector of the Politecnico di Torino, and then you were also a minister for education of Italy, 2011 to 2013, and since 2014, president of the foundation. Then we have Valentina Doorly, who is a senior business advisor, writer, fully accredited member of the Association of Professional Futurists. Wow. And expert in strategic foresight. And this is the main topic why you are here. You will tell us a lot more about the future. Stephen Taylor, you are joining us from the Area Science Park Digital Innovation Hub of Friuli Venezia Giulia. You are there the Director for Innovations and Complex Systems. The future is very complex. We will look into the future with you. I know that you have helped a lot of organizations, enterprises to look into the future, to reorganize themselves. And then we have connected remotely Ivo Jungo. Welcome. Just to check, can you hear us? Can you say a word?
Yes, I hear you perfectly. Hi to Trieste. I hope you hear me as well. And
yes.
I'm really sorry not be able to be there physically. So it was a long wish for myself to go to Trieste. It would be a nice opportunity, but due to some health problems I had last week, I decided to access remotely. Maybe next time, hopefully.
Health is the first thing that we have to care of, so your decision is certainly right. You are actually Vice President Carrier Business in Huawei, Switzerland. We had really the wish also to have somebody from the technological side and to have our vision. And you were formerly also working with Swisscom, which is the main telecom provider in Switzerland. So you have a huge experience also you can bring us from this side. Okay, now I would like to start with Valentina, because I said you are the one who's looking into the future. What is the future bringing us? I know you have published also a book on the megatrends. Could you tell us a few words about those megatrends that you have identified, and maybe also what is the role of digitalization in those megatrends?
A few words of megatrends is hard to deliver because megatrends would take, well, half a day for each one, but never mind. First of all, we would like to point out how the word future has become popular in the past 2 years. Now there isn't a conference, there is an article that doesn't encase the word future in the title. Why is that? Clearly because we have lived in a very complex world for a long time, and The complexity is our making, isn't it? It's globalization, hyper-globalization, technology. And we try to make sense of this complexity, also using and creating concepts and words such as megatrends. Megatrends are, well, they do belong clearly to a complex family of trends. We have mega, macro, zeitgeist, contra, whatever. Megatrends are the big ones. They are those huge systemic transformative changes that impact on everything. Every industry, social dimension, economic dimension, and conventionally we recognize 5 megatrends: demographic decline, as we all know, technological revolution, globalization, hyperglobalization, deglobalization, and, alas, climate change. So each one of these megatrends clearly impacts, and it's all-encompassing. There isn't an aspect of our economies that are not impacted by them.
And where does now digitalization play a role in those megatrends? Is it a transversal topic affecting all these megatrends?
Digitalization is a, let's call it a corollary of technological revolution that expresses itself in many, many ways. And you can read about a multitude of sub-megatrends or macro trends. Digitalization, I synthesize it with a description. We have created planet B. We are on planet A physically, but we have created a planet B of virtual everything. And the industry I belong to is tourism and hospitality. We've been very proficient in creating a planet B, where things can be simulated, they can be reproduced, they can be replicated. And thanks to Planet B, in my industry, we are able to tell a tale, to narrate destinations, territories, and mountains that used to be remote, high lands. They're not remote anymore, and we've been even too good at it, possibly, Thomas.
And about this industry, this particular industry, which is the tourism industry, we'll talk later on during the speak. Now, Francesco Profumo, if you look into the future in the next 10 years, let's say more on digitalization now. What do you expect? What will happen? What can we expect in the topic of digitalization?
Yes. First of all, I have the feeling that we are in a period where there are two very important points that was different from the past. The first one is velocity, and the second one uncertainty. In the sense that if we look in the past, and we look, for example, the industrial revolutions, we had the first industrial revolution that was between the 17 and 1800, and it was lasted for around 80 years. And the major results was the use of the steam energy that was in some way replacing the muscular energy of the humans. The second industrial revolution was between the 18th and 19th century, and in this case the characterization was the electrical energy, and also in this case it was last for 60-70 years. And the third one has been between the 19th and the 20th century, and it was characterized by what we can call automation, and also again was in some way to replace the human energy, the human force. We are now in what we call the fourth industrial revolution. And if maybe for the first time we have something completely different, that what we have as a big issue is related to artificial intelligence. This means that for the first time, it's not muscles, the major terms, but it's brain. This means that we can have what we can call the cerebral brain, and in the other side we have the artificial brain. In this case, I had the feeling that the revolution could last the maximum 20 years. But we are thinking already about the fifth revolutions. And the fifth revolutions will be more and more virtual. And the digitalization that was in some way a big issue launched by the President von der Leyen in the famous speech in 2019 in November, where she launched the three big transitions: digital, ecological, and what she was calling, the third one was social resilience. But after only 3 years, less than 3 years, 2 years and a half, we understand that the three transitions are not separate, are just integrated. Think about the circular economy. We talk about circular economy, but in order to talk about the circular economy, you needed to talk also digital industry, and you needed to talk about social issues in the sense that you needed to invest more and more in education. Then the future is very fast and certain, and where the human centricity is more important than that in the past. And the first big investment should be in education, but in a different form, because in our life we had what I call the industrial model of education, in the sense that we went to school for 13 or 17 years if you got a PhD, and then the knowledge was available for almost your life. Not for all. If you are a professor, you have to study, but most of people, they could survive using it. What happened for this relation between the Industrial Revolution and the education model? And for these two big terms, uncertainty and velocity, we needed to have a complete different model education, in the sense that you needed to go for a certain number of years, maybe a number of reduced years. But first of all, you needed to learn how to learn. And then you have to go back to school, maybe 5, 6, 7 years, 7 times in the life. And any time you needed to cancel some of the new knowledge and get new knowledge. And if you don't have this complete process for the life, and any time you go to school and you needed to learn how to learn, it's impossible. It's very costly, not from the economical point of view, but from the psychological point of view. Then I think this is the major point.
So it's essentially also that the processes are speeding up every faster, and that we have to follow as humans, but also as enterprises then, to take up these processes and use the benefits of it.
Yeah.
And there I think I can readily invite also Stephen Taylor to intervene it, because you mentioned now the enterprises, Industry 4.0, and we are going already into 5.0. But honestly, I'm not really convinced that all our mountain enterprises have understood yet what is 4.0. Are we already on the track to 5.0, Stephen?
Well, thank you, Thomas, and good afternoon, everybody. I think one of the things coming on from what Francesco was just saying is that the duration of each industrial revolution has got shorter and shorter, but also that perhaps we're starting to see them overlap. So the gap between one paradigmatic change and the next may no longer exist. So we may see things start to overlap each other. And there may be organizations that lag. There always have been. In the first industrial revolution, not everybody switched to steam immediately. And in fact, mobility was one of the last things to adopt steam. First, it was static machines that used steam power to replace human labor. But what we may well see in the coming years, and this is something that we've been experimenting here in Friuli Venezia Giulia as part of the work that we do, funded both by our ministry, the Ministry of Universities and Research, and by the regional government of Friuli Venezia Giulia, is to experiment with ways of helping small and medium enterprises in particular to adopt those technologies as early as possible. So to use digitalization in their industrial processes to move forward as quickly as possible, to adopt the fourth industrial revolution before the fifth and the sixth overtake them. And we see that not as something that's an optional extra, but as something that is absolutely essential for their survival. And we do that in a concrete way by providing them access to nodes that have specialization in different vertical areas of the digitalization process. So looking at simulation technologies, looking at Internet of Things technologies, looking at not just the infrastructure that's been talked about a lot today, but the way in which data can facilitate processes of every kind in the industrial world and in the social fabric. And so
what is your experience? Can they really take up all these developments, or do they need, as Franco said, more education, professional skills on that as well?
Well, a wise man once said, before you think, read. And I think we should all continue to educate ourselves and to be educated. Education isn't something you do until you're in your early 20s, then go to work for 40 years and then retire. Education has to become lifelong. And it has to be lifelong, but bite-sized. It doesn't have to be every few years, I take 4 years off and go do another degree. It has to be facilitated in the workplace, as well as in society in general. But as we've heard a lot over yesterday and today, it's not enough for data to be open. When I first started my career in the environment that Valentina works in, looking at foresight and looking at technology road mapping, what was called then business intelligence was a scarce resource. And it was sold on the basis that it was hard to get, so the more you could get, the better it was. That equation has been completely inverted, because now the problem is too much information and not enough time to filter it and find out the salient points. So what we now need is not more information, but more mechanisms using probably artificial intelligence to help us to filter through the mountains of information that is available to find the things that we need and to use them in a productive way. And that means developing approaches not just to open data, but what is now in the scientific community often referred to as fair data. Findable, accessible, interoperable, reproducible data that can be used, input once, and then used for a variety of applications, a variety of systems across all of society. That means things need to be as open as possible, as secure as necessary. So we need to see data being available to everybody with the correct levels of security and privacy guaranteed, so that we all feel comfortable sharing our data because we see the benefits to all of us. And that was very clear in one of the presentations earlier today from my colleague from CISA, talking about the need to share medical and genetic data in order to build the critical mass of data that allows us to make better decisions, better informed decisions going forward. And that will become more and more applicable to every walk of life. Evidence-based decision-making is now possible. It should be adopted by all politicians and all decision makers, I hope, in the near future. But we need to facilitate the provision of the data to facilitate those decisions, and we need it to be reliable data, so it needs to be clean data going in once, usable many times.
It's to make the complexity more accessible. Say it in one word.
Absolutely.
No, it's true. And that's also why we identified data as one of the major topics of our action group. But I think I really noted this term of fair data. It's not only open data, it's really also the management of the data, the accessibility, the risk reduction, etc. So it's also there a very complex system to access and make use of those data.
And unlike a lot of acronyms, it also has the beauty of being a word that should also apply to our use of data. It should always be fair. It should be equitable for all of society.
That's perfect. Yeah, thank you very much. Now we have Ivo Jungo, and you're coming more from the technological side with actually 5G being introduced in all countries. We are struggling really to bring this technology to the forefront. It reminds me like a little bit like the situation with Industry 4.0. We're talking about it, but we have not yet developed it everywhere. And behind there's also already research on 6G technology. So maybe also from your side, what can we expect by these technologies in the upcoming years? We know that the technologies renew every 10 years. Now we have heard that the applications are even more faster. Ivo.
Yes, fully, let's say, agree what the colleagues already mentioned. So I guess there will be a variety of a lot of new use cases coming up, health, schooling, education, new workplaces, things like that. Everything, I mean, the base of everything is a fundamentally deployed infrastructure, stable infrastructure. So talking about 6G, so I mean, the change from one generation to the next is not only a question of optimal interaction, performance and efficiency on the operator side. So concrete business cases must also be considered. So operators invest at the moment heavily into deploying 5G in their infrastructure and will first make sense for sure to get the maximum out of this spectrum before pushing into a new technology. So therefore, question of the 6th generation does not really arise at the moment. We're still struggling with pushing and rollouting 5G to develop business cases for business customers. For sure, we see 6G as a fusion of the physical, cyber and biological worlds, and probably only until 2030 we'll have like pilot projects. We work at the moment at standardization. We're really at the early stage in standardizing, working with all these organizations, working on standardization and working on, let's say, the technology, but on a very early stage. What I agree and what is maybe similar to the different roads before, we had now life cycles for maybe 10 years. So 3G to 4G was 10 years, 4G to 5G was 10 years. What we expect is that 6G will come earlier than in 10 years. But it will be a well-known evolution path, as we know, from 3G to 4G. Frequencies will be added. 5G will possibly be developed first into 5G Advanced, as it was the case with 4G to 4G Advanced and LTE. So our main focus as Huawei at the moment is for sure we work on 6G, but it's quite on an early stage. We really focus with our customers to deploy 5G, and really also there we are on an early stage and not really using all the opportunities 5G will offer in future.
So there's a huge potential also already on 5G. Don't even think about 6G. But now we will go more into the details of some very concrete topics. I would like to start with you, Valentina, once again, because you are working on the tourism sector. And tourism is really one of the main economic activities in the Alpine area. And we know that digitalization can also help to develop new services, new offers. Can you tell us a little bit more what really digitalization in the tourism sector can bring us forward?
Absolutely. As you all know, tourism has played a pivotal role on the Alpine territory to keep it alive and pulsing and full of economic activities. Just to frame the stats, 14 million inhabitants across the Alpine territory, 8 countries involved. Tourism delivers 120 million visits a year, generating over 400 million bed nights. That is phenomenal. The appeal of the magic world of the Alps is unbeatable, and digitalization has certainly accelerated this appeal by disseminating media, multimedia, through digital connection across the world. I can tell the tale of the Drei Zinnen to the 5 continents, and it's unbelievable. This has worked very well, Thomas, even too well, and we now suffer from the well-known blight of over-tourism, to which, by the way, digitalization is again the answer. Digitalization has transformed the industry, and the mountains make no exception, on the side of the offer, the demand, the management, the back office, the profiling, the dealing with the customers. I always advocate, for example, very active CRM activities, which is engaging with a typically loyal base of customers, and that takes digital everything, profiling, dealing, talking, and it's a dual-way communication. We want to hear back from the customers. And on this case, I can give an example that is best practice for sure. Well, we're talking about future, and there are few things that express vitality of an area, district, a community, than thinking and planning and building the future. Future we can have insights of the future, but mostly we can build the future. We can choose the future that we want. And Dolomiti Paganella, for example, has initiated a fantastic consultation with stakeholders, business operators, and visitors through digital means, inviting everyone to come in and build a vision of the future for this mountain district. 2,000 questionnaires online were gathered, 4 waves of workshops. It's the blended hybrid pattern, so meeting in presence and digitally connected, and shaping a 4 line of actions that are now being implemented across the territory. Equally, I worked on the Alps for several years. I remember it was easier. It's often easier to roll down to the lowlands rather than cross over the pass. And digital is a great solution to that. We are now connected with whoever we want. Training, online training, that I've heard a lot of talk about training these 2 days. It's essential. Knowledge obsolescence is upon us every day. We should invest in lifelong learning, and so we should. And across the mountains, it's clearly more difficult, but this can be certainly overcome with blended initiatives, digital and in physical presence. So the biggest win for the mountains and digitalization to me is that a periphery is not a periphery any longer. Innovation can happen anywhere now thanks to this new neurological network. That's the new neurological network of today and tomorrow. So we're part of the party.
And digitalization really helps us to overcome one of the major natural obstacles of mountain regions, the distances. They disappear completely. And we can develop new offers, digital offers. We can also combine better the services in tourism. Tourism offices for me can disappear because we can all externalize. We can have new offers, better integrated. So these are really huge potentials in the tourism sector. I know that you, Bruno, Francesco, sorry, are also working on the smart farming approach. This is another major topic for mountain areas. What can we expect in the sector of farming from digitalization?
It's very similar to what can happen for the tourism. To put some intelligence in the smart system, in the farming, is something that really can change the perspective of farming. Think about how to use the water related to the farming. Water is a key point for the future. Could be one of the big issues that we need to front end. And if we are able, for example, to connect the meteorological system by satellite and to get data from that, starting from that, we can really design how to use the water for the farming. This is only one point, but think about what can be done related to using sensor sensor for any kind of problem that you can face with the farming. And another big point is related to data. Data also for farming is really one of the key points. Because with data, what you can do today is to look back, history, what happened in the time. You can manage the processes that are in place, and then you can design the future. This means that really, also for farming, that could seem to us as something very stable, very traditional, in reality can really change using digital. Digital, in this case, is not only soft digital, but is mainly hard digital, in the sense that there is a strong line of research in different sensors that can be realized, starting from the day-by-day experience and try to optimize processes that are much more difficult if you have to do starting from, we can say, the tradition. And in Trento, we have a very special situation because we have an excellent foundation that is a foundation Edward Fam that is maybe one of the best foundation in Europe for research in agriculture. And in the meantime, we have the foundation Bruno Kessler that is technological. This means that we are able to design and produce sensors. But in the meantime, is maybe one of the best centers in the world for artificial intelligence. That if you put all these three things together, this means the foundation for research in agriculture, foundation in research for MEMS, for new sensors, and a foundation that is great for artificial intelligence. Maybe we can design the agriculture of the future.
That would be great, because I think we really need an agriculture for the future. We need to change our production systems, also with the climate change, for instance. And this is also one of the reasons why we as AG5 have, for instance, developed a project now on digitalization and water management. Exactly what you told before now. This is really a huge challenge for the future.
If two more words. In 1962, Bruno Kessler was the president of the province of Trento. And this man, that the foundation today is named the Bruno Kessler Foundation, he was saying during one conference like this that Trentino cannot grow only with apples, but needed to invest in education, research, innovation, and internationalization. This was 60 years ago. Today seems something natural. At that time, and the next step was that in 1 year later, he founded what they call Trentino Center for Culture. It was the mother of the FPK Foundation, and then the university.
It reminds me a lot about the triple or quadruple helix approach.
Okay.
It was invented there. Okay, thank you very much. Stefan, now our mountain economies are mostly characterized by very small, very, very small enterprises. How can we really deal with this challenge to bring them to the topic of digitalization, to make them work on this topic, to make them work also together? What are your experiences?
Well, as we've already heard several times, digitalization as a first step requires certain infrastructure. So we have to make sure that that infrastructure is available to mountain communities. Once that infrastructure is there, we need education to help people to be aware of how to utilize it. And then what we really need to do is to create a platform and a level playing field and an open environment in which the people themselves will exploit that opportunity. Francesco was talking about advances in agriculture, sometimes referred to as precision agriculture. We've heard a lot about precision medicine. The word precision often comes out again and again as an expression of the way in which data can enable us to take leaps forward in doing things better in a much more tailored way to the specific environment, individual, company or organization involved. SMEs have often suffered from the fact that they don't have the large resources of a large corporation to invest in futures thinking, to invest in long-term strategic planning, to invest in gathering data for themselves. What the public sector can do is help to make that data available through open access platforms in a way that small and medium enterprises and micro enterprises can take advantage of the same opportunities that large corporations have, assess their own strategies, develop their own strategies, and move forward in a strategic way, not just in a tactical way, handling from crisis to crisis what the world throws at them. So we need to empower local communities in mountain areas, enable them to run their businesses with a wealth of access to a wealth of data that is reliable data, clean data, that is kept in an open source environment, that is findable for them, accessible for them, interoperable and reusable, and allow them to develop their own applications and their own ways of exploiting that data, both in terms of the agricultural economy and in terms of all of the expressions of the digital economy that, as you said, Thomas, can be run from the center of a city or the top of a mountain. There is no differentiation anymore. One of the risks that we have, obviously, for those who live in mountain areas, and you said that digitalization will make distances disappear. That's not exactly true. The distances are still there. What will disappear is the automatic guarantee that someone who chooses to live at a distance will live in an isolated area. Because once everybody gets wind of the fact that they can run their business from a beautiful area in the Alps, we may find that the migration towards cities is reversed, and we see a migration away from cities, and some of the population choosing to live in more rural areas or in more mountainous areas. Reversing that trend has positive as well as negative aspects. So we need to be aware of the implications of everything that we do and try to propose solutions that don't generate the next problem. Each of the industrial revolutions that Francesco was talking about earlier brought with it some problems, and we're currently dealing with one of the biggest problems humankind has ever faced, that of climate change, which was brought about by innovations in the use of hydrocarbons without taking full account of the impact of their use, partly because initially the scientific evidence wasn't there, which teaches us that we need to continue to invest in research and scientific research to make sure that we will be aware of the problems that some of our today's solutions will bring in the medium to long term. We're not fully aware yet of the psychological impacts of certain types of online learning and online engagement over the long term. We need to monitor those and make sure that we don't create additional problems with the solutions that we implement today. But we should, as Franco Scolari said earlier, move very quickly to adopt technologies, but also develop systems to monitor their impact, not just industrially, economically, but also socially and environmentally, and make sure that we move forward in a coherent way. The Alps can benefit enormously from digitalization, and small, medium and micro enterprises in particular, if they're given access to the technologies and to the data, and then given the freedom to develop their own futures on the basis of that access.
And as we discussed yesterday, you were mentioning now the challenges. We were also talking yesterday about the access to service of general interest. So not all people are digitally fit. We must not leave anybody behind, which means that we have to have in parallel for quite a long time digital and physical services, and we have to care especially for those who are not digitally fit. So these are big challenges that we have to deal with. When we see the potentials, we have also to see what are the possible negative sides. That's a very interesting point, a relevant point that you...
Yeah, and we need to create digital awareness, understanding and capability, and my hope is that we do it avoiding creating digital dependency. So we created awareness of the capability to use various energy sources. We also, as we know, created dependency individually and nationally. And one of the things we're seeing as a result of the current situation is the urgent need to accelerate what was necessary in terms of climate change, because it's necessary also in terms of energy autonomy. We need to be digitally autonomous, but digitally connected with each other as well.
And create new dependencies. For instance, from electricity. If the electricity system fails, we have no digitalization anymore.
Yeah, and let's not forget,
that's very soon that it can happen in the next days.
In terms of the time of industrial revolutions, we take it for granted that the electrical revolution was so long ago, it's now equally distributed around the world. That's not the case. Not every community around the world has constant access to electricity. Yeah. Let's try not to create new gaps with the digital divide.
Yeah, exactly. Now we were talking about tourism, about farming, about the enterprises. Although all this happens into a beautiful landscape, which is the Alpine area. And I would like to turn to the term of landscapes, because I know that Ivo, you at Huawei, you are working in a project together with the IUCN which is called Tech for Nature. And now this makes a big question mark for me. What has Huawei to do with nature and landscape protection in the Alps? What can digitalization contribute to that? Ivo? We don't hear you.
Sorry, I was on mute, sorry. So yeah, Tech for Nature is a global partnership to scale up success in nature conservation through digital technology innovation. So created by the International Union of Conservation of Nature and Huawei's Tech for All program, Tech for Nature is designed as an open partnership to apply and promote digital solutions for fair and effective protected areas. So we work today with 1,000 experts in more than 30 countries on 300 protected areas to improve and evaluate their conservation success through these IUCN green standards. So this growing partnership will provide guidance on the appropriate use of technology in area-based conservation and directly involve the ICT industry sector in supporting nature conservations. So there are many examples. So technology as a base of surveillance, of supporting, let's say, all these initiatives to protect our nature. And I'll give you one concrete example maybe from Mauritius. So the main goal there is to demonstrate through the appropriate use of technology and digital solutions and active restoration of coral reefs, preventing of conflicting situations with locals. So it's not only technology, it's also communication, it's dialogue with local people, in sensitizing them, but also fully scientifically managed areas. So the project involves coral farming, whereby coral fragments are attached on so-called spider frames, software monitoring the growth of the rate of these corals. So if you are successful, if there are some problems occur, it's then also an alarming system if something happens. So with technology, we try to support institutions like the IUCN in, let's say, developing and protecting these different nature reserves. So we see technology as a base, and for me, it's similar to different other use cases. What do we do with IoT solutions? We collect data, we transmit data quite in real time through mobile networks to a cloud. These data are being analyzed and some actions are triggered. So this is always a similar approach, a similar process you can use for many, many use cases.
Thank you very much. And to add maybe one very personal experience also from Switzerland, what we can do with this technology is that we have tried to monitor the state of irrigation systems by aerial drones connected via 5G. So they do not have to walk kilometers and kilometers, but we can survey them every day if they are still clean, if they have to be cleaned up, etc. So these are very concrete examples also.
Yeah, and if I may, the same approach can be used in managing forests, and that's a key industry for the Alpine region. Using drones to effectively manage forests and using remote sensing technology to early detect forest fires is crucial to protecting the forests, but also to commercialization in a sustainable way of that forest asset, because it is an asset for the Alpine region.
Absolutely, yes. And we could do a lot more with our forests, also with digitalization. So now, the audience, you were listening for quite some time. Now it's the opportunity for you, and we need a microphone. If somebody could organize a microphone. Sorry, Alessio, many thanks. This is the most important person for us, Alessio. Who is he who has organized everything? Together with the colleagues from Friuli, Venezia Giulia. Many thanks. La signora.
Buongiorno. A proposito proprio del...
Can you ask the question in English? And maybe if you take off the mask, we understand you better.
About the monitoring of the landscape, and in particular forest and natural landscape, I was asking if it is possible to create coordinations with with the people that are in charge to ride fires, because in many places, in many regions of Italy, the fires at the end are noted. The people for dry it, for avoid the damage that the fire provokes, are called, but there is no water, or for example, these people have not so much cars or way to reach the places in which there are the fires, and there is not a monitoring with the military forces for avoid that the people that are the owners of that pieces of land expose themselves to denounce directly these episodes. So I got the answer.
Yeah, if I may, the short answer to your question is yes. Clearly, it is possible to link up all of the stakeholders involved in that process. And I would go further. It's possible with digitalization technologies, not only to do that in a regional or national way, but to do it in a transnational way. And one of the things that's incumbent upon the Alpine territories is to standardize approaches so that monitoring technologies are interoperable, so that the network manages and collects data, because let's face it, some of our forests cross borders, and once a fire starts, it doesn't respect borders. We need then the alerts to be simultaneously transmitted, not just to the location, the responsible authorities in the location where the fire started, but to all of the authorities that could be affected by it, based also on the interoperability and interaction with meteorological data, which needs to be gathered and made available in the same kind of system. That approach can be applied not just to forest fires, but to seismic activity. It can be applied to drought. It can be applied to any natural disaster or natural phenomenon that could impact not just on our safety and security or health, but also on our commercial viability in terms of certain industries. So having early warning is always a good thing. The way to get early warning is to have lots of sensors distributed, whether they're human or machine, have them networked in a fast and effective and reliable way, and make sure that that data arrives with the people who need it. We talk a lot about data. Data is the basis on which you can build intelligence. Intelligence is the necessary requirement to spend a long time developing wisdom. We need to start to get not just smarter, but also a bit wiser about some of these things.
And I see Ivo nodding his head. I don't know if you want to add something.
No, fully agree. I couldn't explain it better. One thing I like in this is, data and the whole IoT are really helpful to collect this data, to read them and to analyze better. But where we as human persons still are needed is to establish, let's say, these collaborations, establish the use cases. So what data must be collected? Who must be involved? What kind of different groups do I need to have in this use case, and to find the collaboration? This will never be done by a robot or by a computer. This is done by us manually in finding collaboration, finding agreements, and in building the use case data. And IoT is then enabling everything much faster and much more efficient than we have it in the past.
digitalization, once again, as a strong tool to improve the situation. It's not the aim in itself, but something that helps to improve the situation. By the way, there is a European project now underway, which is called FIRES, a transnational project which runs all over Europe, which is dealing exactly also with those questions. So there you will find more information also. Okay, some more questions, please, from the audience.
Thomas, if I can come in on the natural disaster point. Yeah. I think it's a good approach to remember how strongly digitalization comes in when it comes to natural disaster. Remember Vaia, the terrible storm that hit a good section of the Dolomites 31st of October 2018? Thanks to social media and digital communications, within hours and days, thousands of people were pouring into the area to help out clearing the timber and chopping it up and distributing for the sale. And this tells us something important that I think we should never forget, that our community should work on solidarity. And solidarity used to be at the very core of the DNA of the mountains. And we should always cherish it. And technology is fantastic, innovation is fantastic, but we should remain on the driving seat and apply the systemic thinking that Stephen was talking about.
And now in that comes also one term which for me is still something nebulous, which is artificial intelligence. I know that you are working a lot on it. What can we expect from artificial intelligence in the upcoming years for the Alpine area? In 2 words, which is very complicated, I know.
First of all, you don't have any artificial intelligence if you don't have in the back the cerebral brain, the brain, because everything that is the output of the artificial intelligence is done by human. This is very important because in the other way we cannot understand. And artificial intelligence in the beginning had 2 streams. One was to replace the brain. The other one was to go to action similar to the brains. I think the second path strongly wins in relation to the first one. And today, when we talk about artificial intelligence, is everything that can help humans to do better, not substituting humans. This is the key point that we needed to understand. Then also from the social point of view, from the relation to this resilience for the social issues, artificial intelligence could be an important tool. And Fondazione Bruno Kessler, since the middle of the 80s, was investing in artificial intelligence. And what we say that was always season-based. We started from spring, then we had the summer, then autumn, then winter. But today we are, we hope, in a long summer because we have 2 big issues in addition. One is the capability to do faster calculation, and artificial intelligence needs this kind of stuff. And the second one is that artificial intelligence today can use models, what we can say digital twins, or data, completely different. But if we match the 2, it's very useful to get a better life.
And I think that was the last word. All that we do it to have a better life at the end. Better living conditions for us all, but as we discussed here in the USAT context, also for our Alpine people and Alpine enterprises. So many thanks for you for being with us, Francesco, Valentina, Stefan, and Ivo on the screen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are at the end of this 2 days meeting, let me just quickly remind 2 or 3 things. I think we have really seen that digitalization is an important topic. It has gotten even more important with all the corona crisis. We all know about it. COVID has boosted digitalization, its relevance, its importance, and I think we should really use this impulse, this new dynamic that was created also in the Youth Hub context. We have heard yesterday that there is a big political support for the topic of digitalization. We have heard that there is a big support also for investments in digitalization, so we should really use the opportunities that are given so that at the end also our local communities can benefit from them. And we have seen that this should also be in the future be a priority for Youth Hub. We will certainly work on this topic in our action groups in the multifunctional way on this topic. We have seen that digitalization really can help to bridge borders. And with borders, I do not only mean country borders, mental borders, borders between enterprises, etc., borders also between silos that we have sometimes between different sectors. So digitalization is really something which helps us to cooperate, to converge services, etc., and we should fully use this benefit that we have there. As Action Group 5, we will continue with these topics. We have our topics, which are the digital infrastructures, where we will continue on them. We have our topic with smart villages, which is dealing with the use of the potentials in a clever, intelligent way. We have seen that strengthening the skills should be also for us, AG5, in the future a major priority, together with AG3. And we've seen that there are a lot of opportunities. And then also all this access to data, which is on top of it. We have so much data, we must use them, this complexity, and I've noted the fair data approach that we have heard today. We will continue with these topics. We hope that next year at the Digital Alps Conference 2023, where we do not yet know where it will happen, so any volunteers not coming from Italy, because we did it in Italy this year, are welcome. Maybe France, I don't know. Slovenia, I don't know. Switzerland, I don't know. So volunteers are welcome for next year's Digital Alps Conference. We will certainly go on with those topics that we detailed today. I can also tell you that Euromontana, the European Association for Mountain Areas, is holding its annual conference this year in Italy on 25th to 27th of October and dealing with smart mountains. So it's also this territorial approach that will be there on the focus. And this is what I wanted to say also for the future. So we will continue to work on those topics, hopefully with all of you together. Many thanks for speaking today, for bringing your input, your insight, moderating the workshops, actively participating to the debate, bringing in your ideas to help us, bring us forward. And I'm very much looking forward to the next meeting. Many thanks also for the team behind organizing it technically and organizing it with the different action groups. Many thanks. See you next time. Bye.